Welcome back to the third episode of the Pop Culture Abstract Podcast. This week I talk with Dan Buffa. I met Dan through blogging about the Cardinals, but he's also a huge movie guy. He does movie reviews for KSDK.com. That's the St. Louis affiliate of NBC. We go through the movies coming out for the rest of the year, talk about some of the bigger ones we are expecting, and Dan tells you where you can find out his stuff. Yeah, I was just going to run down some movies that are coming out this year, get your thoughts on them, which ones you want to see.
Yeah, man, for sure.
All right, so starting October 20th, we got The Snowman. Heard much about that one?
Yeah, I've heard. I just got the screening for it, and it definitely looks like a good vehicle for Michael Fassbender, and I like that we're getting more of Rebecca Ferguson in it too. And I do. Again, I think it looks interesting. It could be one of those movies. The director looks kind of relatively new, and it's got you got Val Kilmer, J.K. Simmons in it. It's got a great cast, and I think it could be one of those movies that could be powered by the screenplay, but it's also got a great cast. So it definitely looks something that could sneak up and surprise people.
Yeah, and I don't think they've shown too much in the previews, so it leaves a lot to the imagination.
Yeah, because you wonder if a lot of what he's seeing is kind of hallucinations, and because he kind of wants the killer to fit a certain profile, so it leaves a lot up there to be found out when you watch it.
Yeah. So the other one that comes out that weekend is Geostorm. Any interest in that?
You know, my buddy and I were discussing this a little bit ago. Geostorm, you keep looking at what happened to the career of Gerard Butler in this, and he's in all these kind of movies that are kind of like they're not. I mean, Dean Devlin is known for being the kind of guy that likes to do a lot of disaster flicks, and you got Abby Cornish in it as well. But you look at Gerard Butler and you go, you know, what's happened to you since 300? So it's very peculiar trek for that guy. But I guess it looks entertaining on some scale, but I don't know how it's going to really separate itself from all the other disaster films.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like you could put Roland Emmerich or someone like that on the movie and have the exact same thing.
Yeah, there's not really much that makes it like stand out. And when all those disaster flicks that have come out in the past 10 to 20 years, and even movies as unique and powerful as just, the latest movie of Blade Runner 2049, movies like this really have to set themselves apart, and I just don't see anything from the casting to the look of it that really makes me want to have to go see this. I'm more interested in Snowman than Geostorm.
Yeah, and I like how you have to go see it. Get into October 27th, then. We got Jigsaw and Suburbicon.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Jigsaw, with all the Saw sequels, I was asked about Jigsaw tonight. I think that it can be enjoyable to a certain point, but I think that series has become so overrun that even with the latest gap between the last one and this one, I don't know if there's much there to tell. But Suburbicon looks interesting. What do you think about it?
I've only seen a couple previews for it, and based off what I saw, I really wanted to go see it. I mean, it's got a great cast, and George Clooney's made some really good movies recently.
Yeah, it really is, and I like the fact that him and Damon are actually working together too. So that's kind of cool, and it definitely makes it kind of interesting. But I think definitely Suburbicon's the one to watch there.
All right, so then November 3rd, this is one I'm looking forward to, Thor Ragnarok.
What was that?
November 3rd, Thor Ragnarok. It's one I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, you can't really. I mean, that one it just looks fantastic. Just for the fact that I think we finally have a Thor film that could line up against Winter Soldier and Iron Man 3, and because for me the first two Thor films have been kind of lukewarm and forgettable. So I'm looking forward to in Ragnarok. It's just for it being able to stand out. So that does look really good. I like the way they're bringing the Hulk together with Thor, and there's a lot of possibilities there. It looks like it could be finally the Thor film I think we've all been looking for.
Yeah, it seems like the first two Thor movies were setting up everything else that was going on, and this one is kind of like the first Thor movie where we get just his own story.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely something that can, be, I guess, really interesting to watch, and also just for the fact that you finally have a story that's actually worth doing. So I think again I think it's going to stand out and finally maybe get a spot up there next to the other Marvel standalone films.
Yeah, and one of the stories they used for it was Planet Hulk, which was an amazing comic. So I'm really glad to see at least part of that come into the screen.
Yeah, I mean it's got so many things going on with it that it almost makes you forget that it has to connect to the other part of the universe. So I think it looks like a well-rounded movie. It looks like it's finally got a good script to it as well. So looking forward to that one. It is, I mean, hopefully, Hemsworth looks like they're all kind of having some fun. So hopefully it'll live up to the hype. But I think there's something finally to like about. You won't be needing any other Avengers around, hopefully, because you've always kind of hoped that, especially with the last Thor film.
Yeah. So then two other things that come out that weekend I hadn't really heard about but seem interested in is Roman J. Israel with Denzel Washington.
Yeah, that movie, it could be really. I'm looking it up right now as well, but I know it had title change before, but it looks like for a surefire Oscar film. And I really like the fact that I'm most excited by the fact that Dan Gilroy is writing and directing it. He's a very talented writer. He wrote The Bourne Legacy. He wrote Nightcrawler with Jake Gyllenhaal. And this is one of those movies that he's kind of carving out for himself as far as a director. And it's one of those things where he wrote and directed Nightcrawler, which was a great film. And this looks like a surefire Oscar kind of film for Denzel Washington. And it gives Colin Farrell a good role as well. He kind of plays a driven attorney who's trying to, crack this case, but he keeps finding himself in all these situations that keeping him from really nailing down the case in this film. I like the look of Denzel. I like the fact that anytime you have Denzel Washington in that kind of role in an awards season kind of film, it's very special. But I think the additional icing on the cake is the fact that Dan Gilroy is writing and directing it.
Yeah, and it seems like recently most of Denzel's movies have been more action-driven, like at least his big ones. So it's
he kind of seems to be having a little fun with that. The Equalizer with Antoine Fuqua, and even the Magnificent Seven, which I really wasn't a big fan of. He seems to be kind of having some fun there and coasting a little bit. So hopefully with Roman J. Israel, he kind of gets back into that juicy role division where we know that he's a proven guy and he's an Oscar winner. He owns 2 Oscars and he's multiple nominations, and it looks like a role that's going to challenge him a little bit. So hopefully, it also looks like a film that can it's got the crime and the drama, but maybe have a little humor in there as well. But I think he kind of seems like a defense attorney that's in over his head, but hopefully one that's trying to crack the case. But you hope for a little bit of a hint of humor in there, not just a very serious film.
Yeah. So then the other one that weekend that interested me that I haven't seen anything about was Last Flag Flying. It's Bryan Cranston, Lawrence Fishburne, and Steve Carell.
Oh wow, yeah, that's a heck of a cast. I'll tell you that much. I haven't heard about that either. I'm actually, as far as Bryan Cranston's concerned, I'm like, wow, that it's good for him to be in there. But you do get Richard Linklater's is directing it, which you can't mess around with. It's definitely flown under the radar because I haven't heard much about it. It looks like it takes place 30 years after they're in Vietnam. You get some guy reuniting with his other older buddies, and they're trying to get ready to bury his son. And so you get the poster is pretty telling. You got bearded Bryan Cranston, you got Steve Carell in a serious role, Lawrence Fishburne. I like the way it looks. It's a 2-hour film, and again, Linklater, who's really been all over the place when it comes to his genres these days, but it's got comedy and drama listed as the genres involved in the movie, which hopefully means there's more of a lighter touch to it. Three buddies that are kind of coming back together after a very traumatic experience in Vietnam. But I guess once again, the hint there is that Linklater is co-writing. He co-wrote it with Daryl Panaxin, and also he's directing it. So good cast, but interesting to see what kind of touch that Richard Linklater could put on that movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's again, this is the first time I'm hearing about it, and you go to the IMDb page, and again, it's got the trailer. Yeah, and I haven't watched it yet, but just from looking from the poster, it looks like a very serious film. The poster, black and white poster, very, you got three good actors in there though. So you got a very character-driven story, and it definitely looks like one to watch. Again, kind of like The Snowman could fly under the radar, and depending on who it hits and if it stays in theaters long enough.
Yeah. So then the next weekend we got Murder on the Orient Express and Daddy's Home 2.
The monstrous cast of that movie. If you had a chance to see the poster of this movie, it's just huge. You got Kenneth Branagh is directing it, but the cast is just monstrous. And we all know the story, and it's almost like a big game of Clue on a train. You got Johnny Depp, Daisy Ridley, of course, is playing Rey in Star Wars, coming out in December. Judi Dench, Michelle Pfeiffer. I mean, this cast list is ridiculous. You get, Josh Gad, Willem Dafoe. Again, the mystery of the plot. It's even. I mean, I'm all about a mystery, especially one with this kind of a cast and one setting. I'm kind of quietly optimistic about this movie. I'm not a big Kenneth Branagh director fan. I haven't really been a big fan of his movies, not all of them. So when I hear he's directing it, hopefully he doesn't mishandle the story. Hopefully the whole cast gets to shine. But we all know about the Agatha Christie story and the sly noir kind of feeling behind it. But I love the cast, and the poster's great. The trailer doesn't give away too much. It's actually less than 2 minutes, which is always good to see a trailer that doesn't tell you the whole film in basically a teaser. So optimistic about that one, but again, I'm not a big fan of the director, so we'll have to see.
Yeah. And then Daddy's Home 2.
Again, a movie that probably a sequel that we didn't really need, except for the fact that the glaring elephant in the room here is Mel Gibson playing Mark Wahlberg's dad. You get John Lithgow playing Will Ferrell's dad. But for me, the reason to see this movie, I thought the first one was pleasantly funny. I watched it on DVD, but it's just Mel Gibson. I mean, does he kind of get to play lunatic Riggs like Mel Gibson, the guy he's played for the last 10 years since he was essentially, written off from Hollywood due to his Jew-flavored inspired rant and then his hateful rant to his girlfriend on the phone. It just tells you that if you get in trouble off the screen, your on-the-screen prospects go down the toilet. But for me, it's Mel Gibson. I look at the poster and just go, it's Mel Gibson in a big-budget movie again. It's not named Expendables. So I don't know. It could be good, could be bad. It depends on the script. I don't think it was really required. But the first one made money. You got two bankable stars in Wahlberg and Gibson. So I guess a passable sequel. But this one could give sequels a bad name.
Yeah, it's hard to do a good comedy sequel, but I think having Gibson in it's going to help.
Yeah, I just think he's kind of like the wild card. If he's really good in it and the script kind of lets them cut loose a little bit, then it could be good. But if not, it might just be one of those movies you just kind of shake your shoulders at.
Yeah. So then November 17th, we have the Justice League. Are you nervous about this?
I tell you what, there's one more that comes out. It's called 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri. I just saw a trailer for this movie, and it looks phenomenal. It's supposedly a dark story. It takes place, again, inside a very classic case where it's kind of a darkly comic drama. Martin McDonagh, who did, I want to say he did a movie that, In Bruges, he did that movie.
Okay.
He's, and also he did 7 Psychopaths, and it's called, 3 Billboards. Frances McDormand kind of gets the lead role. that when she's kind of like she challenges local authorities who basically kind of coughed and dropped her daughter's murder case. So she basically puts these signs in the billboards mocking the local authorities, which is basically Woody Harrelson and Sam Rockwell. And, it looks, and Peter Dinklage is in it. Frances McDormand kind of has a big role in it. It's classic Frances McDormand where she's just in her Oscar caliber ways. It's got some comic tones to it, but it's based on a true story where this woman literally used the public billboards to just mock the police for passing up on her daughter's murder case. So that comes out November 10th. It could be limited, but that's something to kind of keep an eye on. It's getting some really good reviews too.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. I'll definitely have to check that one out.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a trailer for it on a movie I saw recently, and it's got a little bit of comedy, a little bit of drama, and also it kind of takes place, of course, in Missouri, and I think they even filmed part of it on the edges of Missouri too. So it's one of those movies that could be a very powerful film about bending the authorities to your knee via the billboard method.
Interesting. All right.
But as you're saying about Justice League, there's a lot of there's a heavy heart around this movie with Zack Snyder having to step down due to his daughter's untimely death and having Joss Whedon take over his buddy. So you get a Marvel director taking over a DC movie. And look, the poster that is currently hanging at my neighborhood Esquire is fantastic. I hope the movie is as good as the poster. I love Jason Momoa as Aquaman. We all know how great Gal Gadot was as Wonder Woman in this past summer's movie. She was great in it. And Ben Affleck as Batman. Everything looks good. It just depends on who plays the villain. Because once again in the trailer, you don't barely even see the villain. So is it just them getting together and learning how to fight together? Is Superman, of course, he's being kept under wraps definitely so far by the marketing team, but it just depends on how much Zack Snyder did. If it's his overblown specialty that he has done with, Batman and Superman when they squared off, and then Man of Steel, is style going to defeat substance again, or perhaps there's going to be some story in it?
Yeah, and with all the reshoots and stuff they're doing, it makes me a little nervous that we're going to get two conflicting stories in the same movie.
I'm a little bit hesitant to really fall head over heels for it. I have to see what they have in store, what was the final cut, and if it really gels.
So also that weekend we have Wonder coming out.
Yeah, Wonder's a very interesting movie. I saw the trailer for it. You got Julia Roberts, you got the kid, Jacob Tremblay, Owen Wilson. It's a best-selling movie. You have this boy who's got these they call it facial differences. He's got a little deformity in his face, and he tries to blend into this elementary school, and it's tough, but I hope they don't lean too hard on melodrama. The trailer kind of has that written all over it. Steve Conrad co-wrote the screenplay with Steven Chbosky, who directs the film, and he's done Beauty and the Beast. He wrote that movie. Chbosky, he wrote The Perks of Being a Wallflower, which was one of my favorite movies of 2012. So the guy who's moving into the director's chair is very interesting, and this is, of course, he actually directed The Perks of Being a Wallflower as well. So that gives me a little bit of hope, because Perks of Being a Wallflower was very good. It was very well done. It hit all the right notes with the heartstrings and the comedy. But Wonder just looks like it could lean a little bit too heavily on the melodrama. You have the kid, August Pullman, going to school in fifth grade, trying to blend in. Is Roberts going to get a good role, or does she just kind of do it because she has kids and she wants to step back into movies? Is there a personal reason she's in it? Mandy Patinkin, who plays Saul in Homeland, is in it, plays a teacher. So don't have too high hopes for that, but the director, having did Perks of Being a Wallflower, has me interested to some degree.
Yeah, I didn't realize he made that movie. That definitely moves it up on my
Yeah,
list.
yeah, yeah. At first, I thought he just wrote it, but then I didn't realize that he actually directed Perks of Being a Wallflower. So definitely something that gives him some wings to fly on with Wonder.
Yeah, I'm after seeing the preview though, I'm probably gonna hold off at least until disc, unless my wife drags me to see it.
Yeah, yeah. See, that's one of those movies. You got Justice League. It's going to get eaten up and spit out for that. And with all the movies that maybe from the previous weekend with Murder on the Orient Express or Three Billboards Outside of Missouri, where you got to make a decision, that's going to kind of be the movie. Unless I hear from a trusted film critic that it's really good, I'm just going to pass up.
Yeah. So then November 24th, we have the Death Wish remake.
Death Wish remake. Yeah, I love Bruce Willis, and even though he's kind of I was thinking that they moved that to March.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, it's been moved to March 2nd. I thought they recently moved it. Yeah, on October 7th, they got a new poster and release date. It was supposed to come out in November, but I think they moved it probably due to Justice League. Man, they probably got scared off of that. But yeah, it comes out in March.
Oh, interesting. They haven't updated that on IMDb yet.
I know they have not, because even I looked at it and I was like, man, I could have swore I saw a story that they moved that. But I think it really it's got Elizabeth Shue, Vincent D'Onofrio. I'm buddies with and I've interviewed several times Frank Grillo. I know he was trying to make a version of Death Wish with Joe Carnahan, so I'm one of the people that thinks that I'm not sure if Bruce Willis and Eli Roth can pull it off. It just depends on what Bruce Willis shows up. If it's just the guy that's cashing a paycheck, it could be bad. But if it's the guy that's really digging into this story, which Charles Bronson really carved out a niche for himself with that movie. So we'll see what happens. But the trailer was okay, but it didn't really blow me away.
All right. So then Molly's Game comes out that weekend. Maybe that was the reason they moved it.
Yeah, Molly's Game, because you have Aaron Sorkin, who is just a powerhouse on TV and film. You got Jessica Chastain, Idris Elba, Kevin Costner, Joe Keery. True story. It's got Oscar written all over it. Molly Bloom, the Olympic class skier. She was also a high stakes poker game team, an FBI target. It just looks like another version of American Made, where you have this amazingly true story of this woman that people thought she was something and she was much more. And I'm a big fan of Chastain. I'm a big fan of Aaron Sorkin, based on Molly Bloom's book as well. So Aaron Sorkin gets me in the door. The cast will definitely make it interesting. But that's one of those films, kind of like the Roman Israel film with Denzel, that it just screams Oscar.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it looks, like those two films, unless they really just trip over themselves, are going to be like right there at Oscar's doorstep. So definitely could be the reason they moved Death Wish with that, and also with the Justice League and all the other stuff coming out. They probably just wanted to move the friendly confines of March. So definitely looks good. It looks like a movie that can also again blend the genre. It's got a little bit of a biography, drama, maybe a little bit of comedy, because she was an Olympic class skier who also was a poker genius and also an FBI target. So could be interesting, and it's a good role for Chastain as well.
Yeah. So the next big one I think is December 8th, I, Tonya. I'm surprised they haven't tried to do the Tonya Harding story in a movie yet until this.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those things that it's going to kind of get your attention. One of those movies that I guess it all comes down to the casting, but you get Margot Robbie, who is slowly just kind of coming into her own. I know the director Craig Gillespie has done something I liked before. I'm trying to think what that was. He said $1 Million Arm, which was kind of a crowd-pleasing John Hamm movie, Finest Hours, Fright Night, Lars and the Real Girl. So you got this director that's just done a little bit of everything, taking on this movie. And, of course, Margot Robbie, who is really, again, coming into her own. Again, we're talking about figure skating championships. So you got the Olympic flavor coming into this as well. and another biography story. Yeah, I mean, like you, I want to think that a story about Tanya Harding would have been coming around sooner or later, but one of those movies that's going to depend on how well Margot Robbie plays. I guess Tanya Harding. I guess it really comes down to that. If she knocks it out of the park, the rest of the cast doesn't really seem to matter. But speaking of the rest of the cast, yeah, Bobby Cannavale, he's one of my favorites. Allison Janney, Sebastian Stan. So I'm excited about it because I do think Margot Robbie looks really good as Tanya Harding. The director has proven that he can handle a lot of different things. So, of course, she did. See, for me, I don't really know a lot about Tanya Harding's story. I know who she is, and she was one of the best. But the fact that the movie's going to kind of go into when her her place in the sport gets thrown off when her ex-husband intervenes. So I just think that that's kind of an interesting story that I don't really know all the details about. So if they do that really well, it could be interesting. It's a December release, but for me, the story there is Margot Robbie.
Yeah, and that's probably another one I'll wait for Disc on to see.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, again, the director is very ambitious. He does a lot of different genres. It's got a good cast, but I don't know if I'm really too interested in the story of Tanya Harding. It's not like I'm like shorting her story but for me, I gotta really care about the subject and really get into it. And perhaps, again, if somebody says, "Hey, this is a great movie, go watch it," I might see it. But December's looking like a pretty crowded month, so it's going to be hard.
Yeah, especially with Star Wars: The Last Jedi coming out the next week.
Yeah, that little indie film that's coming out December 15th. Rian Johnson, who's really ambitious filmmaker. Again, you bring back Mark Hamill as Luke. You got Carrie Fisher in one of her last big roles. John Boyega, Daisy Ridley. They even bring back the villain, of course, Adam Driver. Oscar. What's his name? Oscar. He plays
Oscar
one of the
Isaac.
pilot. Yeah, I know. I thought it was that, but I was like, I didn't want to miss say the guy's name. Of course, yeah, Tom Hardy reportedly playing a stormtrooper. Oscar Isaac and Joseph Gordon-Levitt's playing a voice. Andy Serkis. You even got Gwendoline Christie, the tall, forceful blonde from Game of Thrones with a role in it. All these different characters in it. I mean, even Benicio del Toro's in it. But one of those movies that I've never been a Star Wars fanatic, but it's hard to deny how good that trailer was that just came out a couple of days ago. I've watched it a couple of times. I've seen it on the big screen. It just continues the story of Rey and how she comes under the guidance of Luke, and I think it's just it's a movie that everybody's going to have to watch. I think it's a special thing about Star Wars films that I don't even think Star Trek can really compare to, is that when there's a new Star Wars film, it doesn't matter if you're a fanatic or you're just a casual fan like myself, you just have to watch it because these films are kind of like Blade Runner 2049. I think this is why we go to the movies, to get lost in a world of crazy characters, heroes, villains, dazzling special effects, big cast. You got Johnson kind of getting to put his mark on the franchise. So whether you like it or not, I think it's hard. It's going to be really hard to say you're not watching Star Wars.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this since Guardians of the Galaxy 2. This was like the movie I want to see because I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I read the books, I read the comics.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we've got a calendar with all of our activities on it, and that's put on there.
Oh yeah, I mean it's definitely one of those movies you go, yeah, that's just. I mean, again, whether you like it or you love it or you don't like it, you're going to have to take a peek at it because it's just one of those movies that it brings the escapism of the movies into the theater in one experience.
Yeah. So then rounding out the year, December 22nd, we got Jumanji and Pitch Perfect 3. Are you
Jumanji. Just because I'm a big fan of The Rock, I'm probably going to watch that movie just because it makes me really think hard about Robin Williams and the impact he had in the first film and how funny he was and how tragic it is that he's not around. So when I first saw the movie was being made, a sequel, Jake Kasdan directing it, you have, Kevin Hart and Dwayne The Rock Johnson, just kind of, it's going to be a fun film, but it's not even going to measure up to the original because it's Rob Williams.
Yeah, I was glad that they didn't reboot it. It's kind of a sequel based off the video game instead of the board game, so that gives it a little different flair. So
yeah, definitely. And Pitch Perfect 3, I like the first Pitch Perfect. I didn't really like as much the second one. I wasn't really in love with the first one. The second one was okay. So I'm not really as excited about the third one. I love Anna Kendrick. I think she's funny. She's cool. Elizabeth Banks, who directed the second one, is not directing this one. She's funny. Haley Steinfeld, who's carving herself a nice little place in the music world, also in the acting world. But I'm not as excited about this one. So I'm kind of like, kind of shrugging my shoulders a little bit at Pitch Perfect 3.
Yeah, I've never seen any of the other ones. I really could care less to see this one too.
Yeah, and of course you got Downsizing, Alexander Payne directing Matt Damon, who's going to be a very, very busy guy this award season. It's again a movie where people are shrinked. I think the trailer is just weird. Alexander Payne makes these kind of outside the box kind of movies, but this has got to be the farthest he's been outside the box. He's playing. It's a social satire in which a guy realizes he'd have a better life if he was to shrink himself. So him and his wife shrink themselves, and they live amongst other shrinked people. So downsizing, literally, that looks more interesting to me than Jumanji 2 or Pitch Perfect 3.
Yeah, I hadn't heard anything about this movie, so yeah, I'm gonna have to look up the trailer now.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, Payne has made some good movies. Sideways was a good movie. Election, yes.
Yeah. And then, of course, I think on Christmas you have The Greatest Showman with, of course, Hugh Jackman playing P.T. Barnum with Rebecca Ferguson and Zac Efron. It's kind of Hugh Jackman kind of tapping into the prestige and his Broadway showman ability playing this role. The trailer looked very good. It's essentially the original musical that really celebrated the birth of the whole musical show business and how this guy really just went from being a beginner with nothing to creating the spectacle that really everybody remembers today. So Bill Condon co-wrote it with Jenny Bix and Michael Greasy directs it, but the story here is Hugh Jackman because he's just combining that wicked talent of being able to be an action hero and also be a guy who can just, do the musical thing too. He's very talented. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
I hadn't seen anything about that. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, it looks like one of those movies that I think it's really going to ride. It looks like Bill Condon, who usually directs those kind of things, I think he's kind of bringing up Michael Gracie to be kind of his protege directing this one, but it definitely looks like something that could be kind of a whimsical kind of tale that you can take the family to.
Yeah. All right, so yeah, that's movies for the rest of the year. Which one of all of those is the one that you have to see?
Oh man, it's tough, man. I'm going back and scanning all the lists here as I'm trying to figure out which one. I want to see the Hugh Jackman one. I think The Greatest Showman could be great, but for me, I think it's Roman J. Israel. I love Denzel. He's one of my favorites. Dan Gilroy. Tony Gilroy and Dan Gilroy, they're both great. Tony wrote most of the Bourne films. Dan wrote Bourne Legacy. Nightcrawler was one of the best movies of that year. Roman J. Israel, it just looks like one of those movies. It's a courtroom drama, and it's Denzel back in the juicy role department. So that's the one I'm probably most excited to see.
Yeah, I just hope it doesn't get buried by Thor and no one goes to see it.
Yeah. And, of course, you got 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. I'm really excited to see that. Justice League is kind of like the big X factor, the wild card. How does Zack Snyder and Whedon, how do their both visions blend into one big movie? So, but if I had to put a couple movies, I'd say, 3 Billboards, which just looks funny and tragic and just a great blend of drama and comedy, dark comedy. And then you have Roman J. Israel. So those are the 2 films I'm looking forward to the most.
Awesome. All right, so if people want to read your stuff, where can they find you?
They can find me on Twitter. I do a lot of Twitter at Buffa82. Talk a lot of sports with the Cardinals and the Blues, a lot of movies, and just a lot of everything in between. Facebook, I'm on there, Dan Buffa. My stuff can be found at kstknews.com, St. Louis Game Time, in the paper that's sold outside the Scott Trade Center every home game, and also on the SB Nation site. But really, I mean, Twitter is where I'm at. Facebook, both of them, I'm pretty tenacious on.
Yeah, I see you on there a lot.
Yeah, I'm pretty. I'm all over. I'm pretty much very present is where I would put it. But yeah, write a lot, socialize a lot, so that they can be able to find me there. And I do respond to comments. I don't just kind of just drop a column and run away like some people do who don't want to respond to fans. I try to interact with readers and people that follow me as much as I can.
Awesome. All right, well, thank you for taking some time out tonight to talk about some movies. Thanks again to Dan for joining me and talking about movies. Check out his stuff. He listed everything for you. Check out more of my writing at the Pop Culture Abstract. It's popcultureabstract.com. All of our social media links are there. Go out to iTunes or the Google Play music store and look up the podcast. You can subscribe to it there, or you can subscribe at the website. The intro music was Social Damage by the band The Euclids. This week's music is from the band Vanilla Sugar, and this is their track, Be Okay.